Things keep getting worse for the Habs as Kaiden Guhle leaves the game and does not return. We'll be talking about that, plus still a huge problem for the Habs as they give up 5 special teams goals in one game. A lot to talk about, plus a little Kirby Dach update on this episode of Habs Digest. Let's dive in first before we get into this game, Jesse. We got to talk about Kirby, and he's been in some good spirits, right? He was at Habs practice today, and Coach Marty had a great quote about him. He said, we got to find a way to keep his morale up. Him being around is not just going to bring him up, but the group as well. It's a hard thing for a young player to go through what he's going through, and we're going to help him. As you can see him there, giving pats on the back. I think that's to Harvey Pinard heading off the ice, and Guhle in the foreground, who we'll talk about a bit later. But Jesse, he's clearly sorely missed in tonight's game, but it's awesome to see him in good spirits and smiling around the team.
It's important. It's so, good for the rest of the players to have him around. It probably helps him out in this difficult situation. In tonight's game, though, we definitely did miss Kirby, quite a bit. You know what I mean? Just his size, just his physicality against a very big, wild team. Definitely his presence, but we're not going to make excuses. It's not Kirby's fault. We need to move on, as Marty has said.
I should flash mob again. But no, yeah, you're very right. I mean, moving on is always tough to do. But again, like, for someone who has just torn their ACL and MCL and now knows he's probably out for the season, it's just nice to see him around his teammates, giving them the support they need, because it's very easy. I've been injured before. Obviously never played sports at this level, but when you're injured, it's sometimes hard to get that morale up to go out and support your teammates. But you know what? He's doing it, and it's awesome. But you're right. We'll just quickly transition off that into this. And the first thing we got to talk about, though, is Kaiden Guhle goes to the locker room. There was a lot to talk about in this game, but the first thing is Kaiden Guhle, and I truly think the Habs are cursed. I truly think that something happened on that Stanley Cup run that is still plaguing them to this day. Defenseman Kaiden Guhle will not return to play tonight. There were some teasers, Jesse, that he might come back for the third, but he did not. I didn't even see the play where he got injured. I just looked in there. I don't know if you caught it, but I just saw him walking to the locker room on his own power, just taking his helmet off. Not really sure what happened, but before we get into the rest of this game, this is just, things just keep seeming to get worse, and I don't know why.
No, this is kind of like the Twilight Zone, right? And like, we don't want to get negative, and everything else. But obviously, this is like the second very young and kind of cornerstone type of player for this organization that, again, is getting injured. Now, we're hoping that, it's not going to be bad. We're still hoping with Kirby Dach. The news hasn't kind of officially, who knows, maybe we'll get amazing news and it's just he doesn't require surgery, at best a couple months, But anyway, fingers crossed. All the same, right? It's not looking the best, but you have to feel Kirby with Kaiden Guhle at this point. Rather, you just gotta hope that it's not as serious, when that he'll be back. What's so terrible about this whole situation with them is that they were saying, like, at the beginning of third, like, oh, it looks like he's gonna come back to start the third period, but then he just never did, right? So we'll have to keep an eye on the situation. But obviously, we're having a rough night defensively. So then to lose Kaiden Guhle on top of that, definitely not the best.
No, not the best at all. But hey, you know what? Again, all you can do is move on. For the Habs defenders, you're like, all right, we got 5 of us here now. We got to make the best of it. And no one made the most of it more. That's late. I'm tired. Then Jonathan Kovacevic, Jesse, he was everywhere tonight. Jonathan Kovacevic was phenomenal. He must have had 7 or 8 offensive scoring chances. Fleury had to make a rolling pad stack save on him in the slot. Kovacevic was all over the ice, making amazing, crisp passes. And I will say David Savard stepped up a little bit at the end, too. Got an assist in the last 2 minutes of regulation to Alex Newhook to make the game a 5-2 game instead of 5-1. But Kovacevic was really good stepping up on defense tonight. And I thought Matheson maybe, like, once Guhle went out, we saw Matheson play with a little more energy than we have so far this year.
Which is really needed, right? And we're going to need Matheson quite a bit this year and a little bit of that vet presence. And it was nice that Kovacevic did kind of step up because, as I previously mentioned, like Arber Xhekaj didn't have the best night. Jordan Harris, not the best night either, right? So you definitely need in those situations to kind of pick up the slack. And it would make sense that it is like more of the experienced players because I feel like tonight was a big case of like just a very young team playing against a very experienced team in the Minnesota Wild, and it really showed. And I feel like taking a lot of those penalties was a big part of just kind of showing our inexperience. But the question is, how big of a leash is Martin St. Louis going to allow for this, right? Because it has been a trend that's been going on from last year, and it's definitely something that, like, the team's going to have a meeting, I think, and really talk about this and make a concerted effort to take less penalties, because it just killed them tonight. It was basically the story of the game.
Yeah,
Special teams.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, you know what? Let's just transition right into that. And that's another massive, massive problem for the Habs, and that's the special teams. Now, look, again, there were some other positive notes in this game, but early in the first period, if you guys didn't get a chance to watch this, the Habs let in 2 shorthanded goals on the same penalty, where every time they got near the offensive zone, passes were going into each other's skates. There was no offensive setup. The Wild got probably more odd man rushes. They play again. It felt like last year again, where the other team was playing better shorthanded than the Habs were on the power play every single time. The Habs were worse on the power play than they were 5-on-5, and tonight that was evident again as the Wild scored 2 shorthanded goals on the same power play. And then Arber proceeds to interview Alex Burrows on the bench immediately after, which was curious. Don't know if they were trying to flame him right away or what, but oh boy, yeah. You know, there's a lot of people calling for Alex Burrows' head, but you know, a lot of people are also saying, hey, Coach Marty has a big hand in this power play. But I think the biggest thing, Jesse, is that straight up the Habs have some good players, but you compare it to some of the better power plays in the league, and the player talent just isn't quite there. So I feel like it's tough to put blame on specific people all over the place. Obviously, Burrows is the easy candidate. He has said, like, yeah, he's the assistant coach. He runs a lot of the power play. But it's not just him. I feel like there's a lot more things at play, but regardless, doesn't it just feel like last year again with us just saying something needs to change?
Well, I see some improvement, you know, in some ways, like with the power play. They're good when they can go quicker, but in a lot of ways, obviously, right, just special teams, that was definitely the story for tonight. It's like in the third period, once we started to pick up our pace, then we're playing the game. It's simple for the Montreal Canadiens. It's been that for a long time. Is if we're playing a quick game, we're there, right? But tonight it was an experience. It was a game where we were a little bit undecisive. And obviously, you know, while we're playing a really quick game on their power play, those crisp passes, that beautiful Kaprizov goal, you know, on the power play, it's like, that's how you want to execute on that. And the Habs show that I think they have the personnel to make that happen. I think that they can have a good power play. So I don't know if it's just the players. Of course, it definitely helps. I think that's a fair point, Josh. But like, they need to execute on that. They were just, whenever Montreal is being confident, they're making decisive, trying to push the puck, you know, playing more of a north-south type of hockey. I feel, in my opinion, that that's when they're the most successful. You know, so I think that they really just, they need to realize that. But, you know, obviously we let in 2 shorthanded goals before we're even able to get set up for a power play. That's the key thing. You can have the best power play in the world, but you need to get set up first. We're really sloppy on just our offensive zone entries, which did lead to a couple goals, right? And we were kind of making the same mistakes of, okay, well, maybe it's okay for once, you know, to kind of do a sloppy zone entry and then have a short-handed rush. But to allow that twice within 26 seconds, it's like, you don't want to keep making those same decisions, you know, taking bad penalties. It's like, okay, that might happen then, but then to still keep taking those bad penalties, now that's when it starts to become an issue. So again, it's a very young team. This is all part of the learning cycle. You know, we're still taking those steps, you know, forward, but there was definitely some bumps from kind of learning tonight. That's for sure.
Yeah, and again, like the youth shows every single game, and it's no surprise for the team that had the second youngest roster on opening night in the entire NHL, right? And again, Slaf with some dumb penalties, and Xhekaj with some unnecessary frustration after the buzzer of the second period, a bunch of stuff like that. It was just unneeded, right? And it got Montreal, like in the second period, I swear Jake Evans and Jesse Poirier had more time on ice shorthanded than they did 5-on-5. And Monahan also had a good game tonight too. Also shout out Tanner Pearson. I might as well just flash up the box score so you guys can have a look. Alex Newhook with the goal with about 2 minutes left in the game. Pearson actually had a really nice play. He kind of went in transition after a turnover and just faked the pass across and just sniped it. He actually has a really good shot. He has shown a lot so far. But Suzuki with a bunch of zeros across the board. He was a -1. People are maybe starting to get concerned about him, but look, people have slow starts. It's fine. Gallagher, again, looking a little slow. Harvey Pinard, that first line just didn't seem to click, Jesse. And I think, unless I'm dreaming this, or unless it was just a weird line change after a penalty, because that happened about 74 times this game, I thought I saw Sean Monahan out there with Cole Caufield, centering a line with Cole Caufield, while Suzuki stayed with Harvey Pinard. We said before this season, like, you can't split up Suzuki and Caufield, and I stick to that. But if I didn't dream that, if that was a real thing, like, do you think it's possible Coach Marty is like seriously starting to think about this thing that we thought was impossible?
I think it was just one of those games tonight where just nothing was really working. So just trying to switch some things around. I think they have been, you know, Cole Caufield, 3 goals so far, in the season, or at least 2 right now. So it's
Should
like,
have been
he's having a
3.
good,
We still count that
right?
first one in Toronto.
I know. That was a solid power play
Should have had
goal
one
right there.
tonight, but Fleury robbed him too.
That was a nice save, for sure. So I feel like they're doing all right. What's nice, some positives from this game is that as well. Tanner Pearson, his wrists are looking all right. He's looking wicked wrist shots.
Yeah.
So nice to see that from him for sure. But also Newhook, who does have 3 goals in 3 games so far this year. So that's nice to see from him. Centering that second line, and he's on a great pace so far. So those are definitely some nice positives to take away.
Yeah, some wild lines tonight as well. If you guys didn't catch it, it was Pearson with Newhook and Slafkovsky, with Anderson moving down to the third line with Monahan and Gallagher. And yeah, a bit of a weird game. You're going to have losses like this. Even when you're a young team like Montreal, you stayed with the Leafs, you beat down on Chicago. You face a team like Minnesota, who has had the same roster more or less for the last number of years, even with their crazy cap situation, still feeling a competitive team every single year. And they're out for blood with their stars putting up the points tonight. Eriksson Ek with a couple goals, Kaprizov with 3 points, Zuccarello with 3 points. It is what it is. But hey, like you said, Jesse, there are some bumps along the road. There's going to be some learning curves, and games like this, they're going to come. And the best thing you can do is learn from them, just like we said for about 82 games last year. And all we can do now is hope Guhle's okay and, hey, move on to the next one. But that'll do it for this game reaction edition of Habs Digest. If you enjoyed, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. We're almost at 8,500 subs. You guys have been subscribing like crazy, and we really, really appreciate it. I'm Josh Gosse, my co-host Jesse Poirier. We'll catch you in the next one.